Erin Smith is a civil rights activist analyst. She was on the cover of the November 2018 Time magazine Guns in America issue. She's the former deputy vice chair of communications for the San Francisco Republican Party, was also the California GOP-endorsed 2020 state Senate candidate, an activist for free speech and gun rights. She was profiled in Reason magazine for her undercover work in Portland Antifa and another piece on Antifa for the Center for Security Policy. She also wrote an op-ed for The Truth About Guns on gun rights. She is also a writer and podcaster at the Contextual Insurgent Project.
Gun rights are human rights. Gun rights protect your other rights as well. The ironic thing about protecting individual rights is it requires collective group effort by dedicated people over a long period of time. Winning an election is just step one. There's a tendency on the right where you want to think because you voted for someone or maybe you dedicated $25 or $50 to your local group of choice that you can just go back to your life and not have to worry about it. Many hands makes light work, and that applies to protecting your individual rights just like anything else. The important thing about protecting your rights is everything that you put in and do is one less thing someone else has to do. Maybe you only have an hour a week you can dedicate to something, and that's something someone else doesn't have to do. Everyone has different skills and abilities, and even times they can dedicate to something. Like maybe you have extra money you can dedicate towards a cause. Maybe you've got 10 or 15 hours free a week you can put in to knock doors. Even if you have to just lick stamps, if that's all you can do, that's great. That's stamps someone else doesn't have to lick that they can do for something else. I think we're at a very critical time in our nation's history. So many of our rights and beliefs are under threat. We have to come together and have to work hard. So there is no more I'm going to donate or just vote for someone and then walk away. Here's a little example from history that may help you understand. When Franklin Roosevelt was first elected into office, one of the first people he met with was a group of Union delegates that came and were advocating for something that later became the New Deal. Franklin Roosevelt said, "Gentlemen, you've convinced me. Now go out and make sure that I do it." There's two important lessons to take from that. First, you need to build something that can pressure your politicians once they get in office. I mean, how many times have we seen it where we've voted for someone that got into office and they immediately went back on what they said? Well, getting that person in is just step one. Step two is you have to continue pressuring them while they're in office. That makes sure that you're holding them to their promises. More importantly, if you have a visible pressure campaign on that person, they actually have an excuse to do what they intended to do in the first place. Like, even if the person had no intention of going back on their promise, at least now they can say, hey, I have to follow what my constituents are wanting to do. Look how they're pressuring me. This is something you see the left do a lot. And that's something that the right has to understand. That's kind of how the left gets what they want. We see this so many times where if you're someone who's pro-gun or pro-free speech or many things we would consider more Republican or conservative values, how many times do we get someone in office and they start switching over and drifting towards the left? But you don't really see that very often where the people from the left come towards the center. And that's kind of how they do that, is they have these pressure campaigns that are built to do it. 1950s, Montgomery, Alabama, the bus lines were segregated. There was a brave young lady who refused to give up her seat and got arrested for it. And at this point, you're probably thinking, nodding your head and going, oh, it's Rosa Parks. Well, no, I'm not talking about Rosa Parks. I'm talking about a woman named Claudette Colvin. You probably never heard of her, and there's a very important reason you never heard of her. Claudette Colvin was a courageous person, but she did not have organization and she did not have training. And courage is wonderful. Courage is a precondition, but courage is not enough. You need training, you need organization, you need planning. And that's why you know the name Rosa Parks and you don't know the name Claudette Colvin. You have an organization like that today. You have VCDL. Just donating is great, but just donating is not enough. You have to get involved. We're about to see an unprecedented assault on our basic human rights. It's time to get in the fight. I've been fighting behind enemy lines in San Francisco for 4 years now, and it can be hard, but if I can do it, I know you can too. You have to start networking. We've seen the social media push and deplatforming over the last few weeks that's been incredible and unprecedented. You have to start meeting up with like-minded people, building groups and networks that can work together. We have to go back to building community. We have lost community in this country over the last few decades. There was a point 30 or 40 years ago where there was all sorts of social organizations in this nation, and those were places people could meet and build affinity groups and tribes of people that were like-minded and work together. The example of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks I just discussed, networks of like-minded people were absolutely critical for that struggle. There was a local historically black college, and a affinity group formed there, a political action group called the Women's Political Council. It was a well-educated black female college professors that decided to work together and work against segregation. And they spent several years preparing for the Montgomery bus boycott, and they were waiting for the right person to step into the role. Gun rights are human rights because gun rights protect all your other rights. Once you lose your gun rights, everything else is up for a vote. Many of us have different views of how we want to live our lives. Not everyone really agrees with that, but firearms are one of the ways that we use to protect our personal autonomy, not only at the individual level, but at the political level as well. It's time to take action. You can start by going to VCDL.org, clicking on the VA Alerts tab to find out about upcoming legislation that will affect your Second Amendment rights.